So, if you're a shop owner, you know what I'm talking about. ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. It feels like they're on pretty much every car rolling through your doors these days. And the big question is, can your shop actually handle that calibration work? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down what it really takes to get your shop ready. I mean, think about it. Features like adaptive cruise control or lane keeping assist, they aren't fancy add-ons anymore. They're standard. And that means offering ADAS calibration is no longer just some nice upsell. It's becoming an absolutely essential service just to stay in the game and take care of your customers properly. But that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? So many shop owners are worried about the investment, the space, the training. I mean, the list goes on and on. It can really feel like this massive, impossible hurdle to overcome. Well, here's the good news. Getting started is probably a lot more doable than you think. So today, we're going to tackle the biggest misconceptions head on, and we'll show you the practical, real-world steps to getting your shop ADAS ready. Okay, let's just dive right into the number one concern we hear from almost everybody: shop space. You know the one, this common belief that you need this gigantic, dedicated area just for ADAS work, an area that, let's be honest, most shops just don't have lying around. And this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? I mean, these vehicle sensors can see hundreds of feet down the road, so it kind of makes sense to assume you'd need a massive, wide-open space to calibrate them. But you know what? That's not the whole story, not even close. The reality is actually so much more manageable. In fact, you can probably start offering the most common and, let's face it, most profitable ADAS services right there in the service bay you already have. Let's look at the actual numbers. Now check this out. This number is huge, 93%. For all you shops out there that are already doing alignments, guess what? You already have the space you need to perform the overwhelming majority of forward-facing calibrations that are going to roll through your door. And just to put that into perspective, look at the actual distance we're talking about. Most of these common jobs need less than 16.5 feet in front of the vehicle. Some of them need less than 10 feet. That is a far, far cry from a football field. So you might be wondering, where does this huge space myth even come from? Well, it comes from these specs right here. These are the ideal specs designed to handle every single possible procedure for every manufacturer, including those really rare ones. But you don't need the best setup to handle the daily profitable work. The good is more than good enough to get started. Okay, so we've talked about space. The next big myth kind of bundles a few different worries together. This idea that your shop needs to be some kind of perfect, sterile environment, with flawless floors and lab-grade lighting. And you guessed it, the reality is way more practical. You do not need a laboratory. You just need to be mindful of a few key things in your environment, and honestly, they're usually pretty easy to deal with. It really just boils down to 3 simple checks: your floor, your lighting, and your walls. So let's just take a quick look at what you need for each one. First up, the floor. The myth is that it has to be perfectly surgically level. But the reality? Most OEMs just require a fairly flat floor. And here's the best part. A lot of modern ADAS systems can actually measure and automatically compensate for unlevel surfaces. That just takes all the guesswork right out of it. Next, lighting and walls. And again, this stuff is super straightforward. You just need a moderately well-lit area with diffused light. The big thing is to avoid direct sunlight hitting the car or the targets. For the walls, a solid, neutral color is your best bet. And you'll want to make sure the whole area is free of clutter and any distracting patterns on the walls or floor. Simple as that. So when you actually look at the facts, the path to offering ADAS services starts to look a whole lot clearer. Those initial barriers that seem so impossibly high, in reality, they're often much, much lower. And this is the most important takeaway. The biggest thing stopping most shops from getting into ADAS, it isn't a lack of space, and it's not about not having a perfect environment. It's the misconceptions about what's actually required to do the job safely and, yes, profitably. And that really brings us to the final question you should be asking yourself. It's not about whether you can afford to get into ADAS calibration anymore. With the way this entire industry is headed, the real question is, can you afford not to?